Sticking with the markets, because AfriInvest, one of Nigeria's largest investment banking and financial services group, today held an investors forum that considered the investment strategies and outlook for the new year 2023. Robert Omotunde is the Chief Investment Officer at AfriInvest Asset Management and is connected into the studio now for this conversation with me. Good to have you on the line tonight, Robert. Give me some background into what your team at AfriInvest considers as strategies for investment in the new year 2023.
Well, I think that what we try to do is to look at the biggest events that have happened in 2023 and how, 2022, and how the market, has reacted to, most of these issues. We dimension the fact that inflation has been the biggest conversation in 2022. And from inflation perspective, we've seen different global systemic central banks, make a move to ensure that we put a rein on inflation. And most of their moves have been to tighten. So we've seen tightening across, the US economy. We've seen it across major European economies. We've seen Bank of England, and other major systemic central banks, not just within the developed economies, but also within the sub-Saharan African market, Nigeria not being an exception. So we are trying to take a, crystal ball to look at 2023 and to, imagine what are the things to expect from your investment perspective. And that was what formed our, opinion about the strategy we think investors should deploy in 2023. And some of these strategies, I think there are about 6 key highlights in that strategy. The fact that we expect that there will be muted level of inflation globally in 2023. And because of that, yield environment may begin to correct as we move into the new year. Muted downside volatility is one of the things we preached. We said that market timing is going to be very essential and valuation repricing is definitely inevitable. However, investors need to be very cautious in terms of how they position their portfolio. Of course, rotation must be in and out, for from asset classes that have returned decently to other asset classes that still offer opportunities. But of course, diversification must be a bias towards fixed income because we think that fixed income will be the biggest gainer as we look into 2023 on the back that we've seen, massive rise in yield on the back of, the interest rate hikes we've seen across board. But in 2023, we think that the pace will be slower. And because the pace will be slower, we expect the market to react more, more aggressively also for a yield moderation in 2023.
Let's do a very quick look into the outgoing year 2020. So give me a few points around how you think the year 2022 had been so far with the raft of interest rate hikes, inflation chasing by central banks around the world, and those cautious warnings being rolled out by the IMF, by the World Bank, and others as to why central banks need to slow down a little bit on interest rate hike and all of that. Do you think the year 2022 had been positive so far for investors across the board?
Well, investors have had their fair share of the, of the bads, in quotes, for 2022. And that is because of the event of February 24, the Thursday, if you like, call it Black Thursday, because the world woke up to the continuation of recovery that we saw in 2021 after the COVID-19 pandemic hit and brought global economy into recession. Unfortunately, that was not to be because Russia struck in Ukraine, and that led to volatility in global energy prices. Of course, all of the sanctions from all of the European countries, the NATO and the European Union, all of these did not help in terms of how, global economy is now reacting. And that's why we're talking about inflation as being the phenomenon. Now, it is evident that there needs to be a slower pace of that, hiking of interest rates, and which is what IMF has been talking about. However, a country like US Fed, for example, is not ready to, slow down that pace just yet, even though the market, is already guiding towards the end of that tightening cycle. So what we think is that 2022 has, served investors different, cocktails, most of which have been negative, which is why 2023 is a year to be optimistic about. Optimism is coming on the back of the fact that we are beginning to see moderation in, inflation for the US market and, other European economies. We are going to see that ripple effect within the sub-Saharan African market, Nigeria not being an exception. And that's why 2023, promises to be a very great year for investors that are discerning and will position their portfolio to benefit from all of these, possibilities in 2023.
I want to be a discerning investor in the Nigerian market for 2023. What's your playbook? From the monetary policy side, from the fiscal side, the election is around the corner. How are you putting all of this together as that cocktail? Serve me that tonight for 2023.
Absolutely. But politics is the biggest for the Nigerian economy in 2023. One of the projections we did was to look at the polity and the electioneering and how all of these are going. We identified 3 major candidates that we think will produce. Among these 3 candidates will be the winner. Definitely, we are not unclear as to whether any of these 3 will be the winner. Definitely, these 3 major political parties, one of them will present the president. And one thing we are excited about is their policy choices, their policy inclination, the fact that these 3 candidates are pro-growth, they are pro-market, and market is actually excited about them. If there is anything market is worried about, it's about conducting a peaceful election so that we do not have tension within the system. If the election is peaceful, largely whoever emerges the winner of the election, we think that market is going to rally, provided is one of these 3 major candidates that we looked at. So what investors should be careful about as we prepare for 2023 is to position across asset classes. However, for the fixed income market in Nigeria, it's quite unclear because of the level of inflation. By the way, our projection for inflation is not expected to significantly moderate until about June. And by then we also expect that more tough choices will come in, subsidy removal as the government has guided, and I think that because elections will be over, the government will have more courage to take a bite. It's a bitter pill, but I think that it will be in the best interest of the country to take that pill, and that will be the game changer for inflation again, because pressure will rise. So that makes the fixed income market locally uncertain as to how the yields will go. But for equities market, there'll be quite a number of opportunities, market corrections across board because of the negative sentiment that we've seen right now. There is light at the end of the tunnel. This dark cloud, surely we have some some silver lining, which we are optimistic about in 2023.
All right, Robert Omotunde, Chief Investment Officer at Afinvest Asset Management. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your insights into the investment market and outlook on 2023. See you next time.